Welcome to Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute's Lifestyle as a Medicine lecture for January 2025. I'm so excited to have you all here. We have people from all over, and we have a wonderful lecture tonight from Raquela Karamson, who's actually being beamed in from Jerusalem. She'll be talking about veganism and mental health, unlocking the wellness link. We have introduced a new sliding scale for our flagship program, our 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart. A sliding scale, pay it forward pricing model. People can pay as little as $99 and as much as $4.99. And the suggested price is $2.99. And we're doing that to make it more accessible to everybody. These are our various programs. We developed and run the 15-day whole food plant-based jumpstart, which is certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We run that at least a month, every month. In fact, this January, we have 2 cohorts going through, overlapping cohorts. And we also run the LIFT project, which is certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And we have health coaching if you are interested. Our platform is called the Pale Blue Dot Community, which includes the video recordings of lectures, transcripts, chat logs, and discussions, incorporates events, courses, and programs. So we run our various programs on there, such as the Jumpstart and Lift. And we also have some very active discussion spaces, kind of like a very mini Facebook. And we do charge $5 a month for subscription, although there's a 30-day free trial. And the main reason, well, we charge for 2 reasons. One is we keep it ad-free, and that keeps it troll-free. So the trolls tend not to want to give us their credit card, which is good, and also helps to support Pale Blue Dot Community. So we'd love and Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. So please give that a try. And you had to basically, to get to this event, you had to go through there to get here. A little bit about Raquela. She became vegetarian in childhood and has always felt called to advocate for animals. After going vegan 10 years ago, she sought ways to make a real difference, using her creative talents and voice to raise awareness and share the message of compassion. Through donating, volunteering, and hosting vegan events, she has become a passionate advocate for this vital issue. In 2020, Raquela founded Jewish Vegan Life to educate, support, and empower Jews from all walks of life to embrace a plant-forward lifestyle and discover the connection to their Jewish values. Raquela is a certified health coach in lifestyle medicine by Harvard University Medical School. And we got to had the good fortune of seeing Raquela speak at last year's Vegan Summerfest in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And we know that she's a great speaker. We're very excited to have her here. And Raquela, if you could turn on your camera and unmute yourself, and I will stop sharing. Hi, welcome. It's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Very excited.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I appreciate all of you joining tonight to listen to this presentation. I was going to introduce myself a little bit, but I guess they've already done that. So like they said, I'm Raquela, and today I'm going to be sharing about veganism and mental health and how you can unlock that wellness link. So before I begin, I also want to acknowledge that the fact that there's even an ability to talk about this is a blessing, because even these days we hear every single day, you can't escape it, either social media or there's a news piece or there's an article about mental health issues or about mental illness. But just 50 years ago, 30 years ago, this wasn't something that was widely talked about. It's something, if you think about it, that's relatively new to public consumption, to public understanding. And that doesn't mean that the issues weren't there all along. They were. People just did not really know how to talk about them. There wasn't enough research about them, and there wasn't enough of a focus on mental health. So what I'm aiming to do today is just to, first of all, clarify a few things related to mental health, and also share some information that I think is very useful in understanding and in improving your personal mental health. Before I begin, I do want to say that I am a wellness coach focused on lifestyle medicine, using lifestyle to improve your illnesses, whether that be autoimmune system conditions, mental health, or what have you. But I am not a doctor, so anything that you hear today, I think it would be good to discuss this with your doctor if you're interested in pursuing it further. So let's jump in. This one I can go ahead and skip because I've already talked about Jewish Vegan Life. So I think I want to begin by talking about what is mental health. So first of all, I think mental health often gets confused with mental illness. Mental health is emotional, physical, and social well-being. So it's different from mental illness, which we'll get into in a few moments. And what it really means is how you think, feel, and act. And it helps to determine, how you handle stress or things that are going on in your life, how you're relating to others, and how you're making choices. We want to, of course, make healthy choices. It's much more than just the absence of mental disorders. It's also about wellness and happiness overall. And like I mentioned, I think that mental health kind of gets a bad rap because it's confused a lot with mental illness. And it's something that we usually do not take seriously until, unfortunately, there's a time of crisis. Either, something unthinkable happens, such as maybe a school shooting, or, we have to deal with something like either in our family, or we've heard about, people committing suicide related to mental health. So again, there are two different things. Mental health is your overall well-being, and mental illness is when there's a lack of wellness in your overall well-being. So again, mental health is so much more than just a culprit for misunderstood actions. It is very much the status of what it's like to be you at any given moment. So what it's like to be you in any given experience. What does that mean? So that's, for instance, if you're experiencing, stress at work, or if you're experiencing maybe a loss in your family, your mental condition, your overall wellness through that given experience is your mental health. So when the other side of it is mental illness. So that's when mental health is left unchecked for an extended period of time, and then it turns into mental illness. And like any other illness, if you got an injury that's left untreated, it turns into something far worse. If you have a heart condition that you don't deal with, then it can get, worse, and it turns into heart disease. So the same thing with mental illness. Left untreated, it obviously affects a lot of disorders beyond just your mood. And these can include depression, anxiety disorders, things like schizophrenia, even eating disorders and addictive behaviors. Now, some of the factors that contribute to it moving from just a state of, mental health and what's going on in your wellness to being an illness is things like frequent stress. If you experience frequent stress, either at work or in your life or your family life, if you suffer from lack of sleep, if you have poor sleep, or what we're going to focus on today for the most part is poor diet that affects your ability to function at your prime, function in your, optimal self. Now, I want to mention that mental illness, just like any other illness, is nothing to be ashamed of. It's just like getting a cold or having a medical condition, or, dealing with your heart disease, heart health. There's so much information and focus on heart health, on, diabetes and other illnesses and things that people can, I think, see. And with mental health and mental illness, because it's something that for the most part, you can't really see it and it seems less tangible, I think that it's harder for people to understand, but it's not something at all that anyone should be ashamed of. And I think, even a few years ago, I remember when I went through a couple of things, which I'm going to share later on in my own life, seeking help, just going to therapy or anything like that was considered a little, at least in my circles, a little bit taboo, but it is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, and it's absolutely necessary to recover and to not get into some of these, let it get to the point where it gets into some of these chronic conditions. Okay, so I'm sure, like I said before, it touches a lot of people. I'm sure many of you have experienced it. I definitely have experienced a lot of this, not a lot, but quite a bit of this in my family and in my personal life. And recently, as I mentioned, I'm in Jerusalem. There's a lot of friends that are experiencing some tough times, and this has definitely been a discussion that I've been having with a lot of them. And I've been discussing the link between what they can do within their diet to support their overall wellness. Okay, so let's look at what happens when it's left unchecked, if you will. In the United States, 1 in 5 adults experience some form of mental illness each year. 50% of all lifetime mental illness, these statistics were staggering when I looked into them. 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by the age of 14. And 75% begins by the age of 24. And I think when we have numbers like this, it's something that we can't ignore, and we have to look outside of the box, and not just to, what they've been doing, what is done a lot in the medical field, which is medication. Now, while, again, as I mentioned, I'm not a doctor, I'm a coach, I'm a wellness coach. And I think there's, a lot of good has been done. There's a lot of medications that do help people function and in some cases recover. But the way I see it and the way I look at it is that the medication is not addressing the root of the problem, and it's addressing a symptom. So it addresses a symptom and it keeps you going, but it doesn't exactly address the root of the problem. And I think diet can, focusing and looking into what you can do with diet can indeed address a lot of the root of that problem. Because if you think about it, mental illness has risen in the last 40, 50 years as our diet has worsened, especially in the West, what's considered the Western diet. As our diet deteriorated, if you will, we started to consume greater numbers of, animal products and processed foods, along with it, mental health cases have risen. We're going to look at some of that. The impact of mental illness, so untreated mental health, when you don't have that wellness and it turns into an illness. Suicide, for example, is the leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 14 in the US. That is a scary number to think about. People with depression have 40% higher risk of developing cardiovascular and metabolic diseases, which is also, we talk a lot about cardiovascular disease and how much of that affects the population. And apparently people with depression are 40%, have a 40% higher risk of developing that condition. So if you think about, solving cardiovascular disease, some of it could be solved some of it may be coming, about by depression, and some of that could be solved from diet. Serious mental illness in the US causes over $193 billion in lost earnings each year. And that means people having to take time off to deal with mental illness, people in serious depression that aren't able to function anymore and aren't able to, go to work and participate in society as they normally would have. Depression, it's not only in the US, because depression is actually the leading cause of disability worldwide. So when you have staggering numbers like this, especially the first number that I have here, with suicide being the second leading cause of death among young people ages 10 to 14, I think we do have to look outside of the box, and we have to say to ourselves what we've been doing and what is being done for the most part. I know a couple of friends even recently that have been having serious issues with their young children, 13 years old, 12 years old. And the solutions so far that exist are usually a path of medication. And again, in my view, while there's been a lot of advancement and this does help, I think it goes to a symptom and not the root of the problem. So today I want to share that when you have the statement, we are what we eat, this doesn't just apply to other health conditions like, I don't know, autoimmune system conditions or cardiovascular disease. This absolutely applies to your mental health as well. In fact, there was a study in the American Journal of Psychology that showed that a study of more than 1,000 women that found that the Western diet was directly associated with depression and anxiety. And obviously, there's been studies that showed when people are happier, their immune systems are also happier and they have a greater resistance to diseases, including mental illnesses. Increased positive emotions are also associated with declines in illness rates, including mental illness. Now, a big part of this is inflammation. And if you look at diet, a big part of a lot of diseases are caused by inflammation. A lot of autoimmune system diseases, the root cause is some sort of inflammation. And, aging even, a big part of the root cause is inflammation. So a lot of diseases across the board, inflammation plays a big factor, and it's no different in mental health or mental illness. So when you look at sort of the root of where and how the inflammation is entering the body, a big player in that is animal products or a diet focused on fats from animal products, such as eggs, meat, obviously, and fish even, which people usually was taught, was considered to be something healthy. And they found, I'm going to show you some research later in this presentation, that it actually hurts and contributes to the inflammation in the body. So as you can see here, arachidonic acid is a type of fat found only in animals, which serves as a precursor to inflammation or inflammatory chemicals in our bodies. Eating foods high in arachidonic acid, such as chicken, eggs, and other animal products, sets off a cascade of negative chemical reactions in our bodies. Have you ever, for instance, heard about people saying, I have a gut feeling something, or I feel it in my gut? This is not just, old wives' tale or something. There is a actual connection between the gut and the brain axis. For instance, it's not just that there's a connection. As you can see here, with more than 500 million neurons, your GI tract, your gut, is the most complex neural network outside of the brain. And they actually mirror each other a lot in the way that they are built. Almost all of the gut bacteria are able to produce neurotransmitters, just like the brain, like dopamine and serotonin. The gut communicates with the brain in a manner that affects things such as cravings, digestion, mood, stress levels, cognitive function, and even immunity. And there's a few more notes here that I have that I want to share with you about the gut-brain connection. The gut and the brain are basically like besties in a way. They communicate constantly. And a lot of these things, like I mentioned, including, cravings, including sensitivities, including food tolerances, including they communicate on issues of your digestion. Your metabolism also is related a lot to, the gut-brain communication. So these things, if you have this communication going on, this directly affects things like your mood and your stress levels, and can even affect things like pain sensitivity. I mentioned before, cognitive function, immunity, and things like that. Now, the impact on the gut. Animal proteins reduce beneficial bacteria that we need for healthy gut microbiome. And this can lead to, the production of harmful microbiome in the gut that then leads to symptoms such as leaky gut syndrome, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And, in recent times, a lot of autoimmune system conditions are actually linked to the gut. And you're going to see that not just autoimmune system conditions, but also mental health conditions are linked physically to leaky gut. And I actually want to share with you a quick video that just explains kind of what is leaky gut.
Permeability. There is now increasing evidence for the loss of intestinal barrier function that can occur either abruptly, for example after a major sepsis episode, or gradually, which can lead to chronic inflammatory diseases. When the barrier function weakens and the intestine becomes more permeable, allowing microbes and toxins to pass from the gut into the bloodstream, this is known as leaky gut. What causes this leaky gut? In some cases, you may be genetically predisposed to have a leaky gut, but we know that there are a lot of modern lifestyle drivers that can cause a leaky gut. The role of diet is very important. We know that a low-fiber diet can trigger the expansion of bacteria that can break down the mucus layer of the gut, predisposing to a leaky gut. A diet high in saturated fat can change the balance of certain bacteria found in the gut, and these changes are associated with increased intestinal permeability in the colon, that is, a leaky gut. Indeed, the Western-style diet of high fat and carbohydrates is known to be associated with leaky gut. Vitamin deficiencies, particularly vitamin A and D, have been linked to an impairment of the intestinal barrier and therefore a leakier gut. Burn injuries and alcohol consumption have been shown to be linked to leaky gut. Certain infections such as Helicobacter pylori have been shown to increase intestinal permeability. Leaky gut is linked to the development of certain diseases. There is growing evidence in recent years that intestinal barrier dysfunction is linked to the development of autoimmune disorders. Leaky gut has been associated with diseases such as lupus, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, allergies, asthma, obesity, and even mental illness.
Okay, so as we can see, there is new, like he said, there's new research that shows that leaky gut is actually the root cause for a number of conditions, including, as he mentioned there, autoimmune system conditions like lupus, but not only, additionally, mental illness conditions. I myself, actually, one of the big reasons that I ended up looking into, because as I mentioned in the beginning, I was a vegetarian from childhood just because I was one of those kids who wanted to eat the broccoli. I was one of those weird kids that wanted to eat the fruit, eat the broccoli. But I was a vegetarian from my teen years, and what made me do the switch actually from vegetarian to vegan is lupus. I was actually diagnosed with lupus in my early 20s. At first, no one knew what was making me ill. And in doing my own research, basically when I got diagnosed, they said to me that your options was, to get on a lot of drugs, and that the path for me could lead in the future. I might even need to have organ transplants. I don't know if you guys know of the singer Selena Gomez. There's two types of lupus, and she has the same type as I was diagnosed with, and she actually had to have a kidney transplant. And so in doing research and thinking to myself, this is not the path that I want to take, and looking into what the root of this condition was, I came across the fact that lupus is linked to leaky gut, and leaky gut is linked to diet directly. And in improving my diet and going vegan, and it took a number of years, but in healing my gut for the most part, improved my lupus, and I live a very, very, very healthy life. And almost, while there is no cure for lupus, I live an almost undetectable lupus life. So that's just to say that the whole premise of what I want to share today is about thinking about the root cause of conditions, including mental illness, but not only mental illness, rather than the, medications which only address the symptoms. So moving along, like we mentioned, inflammation is one of these key factors. And as you just saw in the video, he also mentioned low fiber diets contributing to leaky gut. And as we know, research shows that a diet of, whole foods, plant-based diet, including lots of fresh vegetables and fruit, is high in fiber. So that, by definition, fights inflammation because of all the antioxidants and all the vitamins that a diet focused around fresh fruits and vegetables would contribute to your body. So again, the root cause for a lot of this is inflammation. The immune system responds to these leaked substances that we just saw by activating inflammatory pathways. Bacteria flourishes with animal proteins and produces endotoxins that cause inflammation. The endotoxins change the chemical structure of the molecules, which our immune system then attacks as foreign. And that's where you get conditions like lupus, in which the immune system periodically attacks itself because it does not know that it's attacking itself. It believes that it is attacking something foreign. Let's talk for a moment about neurotransmitters. Depression is one of the most commonly diagnosed mental illness, and research shows that people with depression often have elevated levels of monoamine oxidase in their brains, or MAOs. MAOs is an enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine, which are these happy hormones, if you will, that contribute to our feeling, are having this, sometimes it's called the love hormone or the happiness hormone. So it contributes to us feeling generally having a positive disposition, a positive outlook on life, on a situation. And if these are being blocked by this enzyme, then in a lot of situations that we would encounter, whether that be something stressful at work, something going on in your family, what your family or friends are lost, when you are faced with that sort of situation and you have an immune system or a mental health system that is already damaged or already being blocked because of diet and other things, you are already at a disposition to deal with these situations in the first place. And that leads to things like, chronic depression or other imbalances in the brain that eventually is an even greater, uphill battle to fight than if you come to these sorts of situations from a sound mind, if you will, and a wellness disposition. Then you're able to, and your hormones are balanced, you're able to deal with these situations that it's inevitable. This will happen to us in life. That's how life is. But if you're, able to deal with that from a well disposition versus already being in a disposition for being ill, then you're able to better approach these situations and come out on the other end healthy. Again, let's talk a little bit about inflammation. Actually, I want to show you guys before we jump into this, just one more clip if I can.
Between mental health and inflammation was first noted in 1887, for which the only psychiatrist ever win the award got a Nobel Prize. But what evidence have we accumulated in the centuries since that inflammation causes depression? Well, people who are depressed have raised inflammatory markers such as C-reactive protein, Inflammatory illnesses are associated with greater rates of major depression. Indeed, that's what's found in a variety of inflammatory conditions, including more kind of benign inflammatory conditions like asthma and allergies. And that's important, suggesting the mood symptoms are not simply feeling bad about having a terrible disease, but may be directly tied to the inflammation. And most powerfully, you can actually induce depression by inducing inflammation. Like when we give interferon for certain cancers or chronic infections, up to 50% go on to suffer major depression. Even just giving a vaccine can cause enough inflammation to trigger depressive symptoms. Taken together, these studies are strongly suggestive of inflammation being a causative factor of mood symptoms. So, can an anti-inflammatory diet help prevent depression? We didn't know until about 43,000 women without depression were followed, along with their diets, for about a dozen years to see who became depressed. And it was those who ate a more inflammatory diet pattern, characterized by more soda, refined grains, and meat, suggesting that chronic inflammation may underlie the association between diet and depression. Normally, we think of omega-3s as anti-inflammatory, but they found fish to be pro-inflammatory, associated with increased C-reactive protein levels, consistent with recent findings that omega-3s don't seem to help with either depression or inflammation. The most anti-inflammatory diet is plant-based, which can cut C-reactive protein levels by 30% within 2 weeks. Perhaps because of the anti-inflammatory properties of antioxidants. I've talked about this before.
Okay, so as you heard from the awesome, of course, Dr. Michael Greger, research showing, and what was interesting about that study that followed these women, the 43,000 women, is that they were not that young. If you notice, the age range was between 50 to 77. The time frame in which they followed them. And still, even at that age, you could see a difference between those that ate a heavy animal product diet and those that ate a diet focused on whole foods, plant foods. And I think, again, a lot of this is directly related to fiber, that fiber-rich foods that help to fight inflammation. And that is, as you can see throughout the research, throughout what I'm talking about here, but also in general, you can do your own research. And the number one thing you will come up with is the relation of inflammation to all of the illnesses in our bodies, but also mental illness as well. And fiber-rich foods and vitamin-rich foods, which we're going to get into in a little bit, that are one of the strongest diet-related things that you can do to fight these conditions and to help regulate not only, again, when you're thinking about mental wellness before it becomes mental illness, you're thinking about a number of things. It starts as maybe a mood swing. It starts as you're having stress at work and you're having a couple of down days. But then if you don't address that, if you don't, if you come home and you eat a bag of chips or you eat, I don't know, hamburgers or something like that, then you're not giving yourself a fighting chance. You're only adding to this type of problem. And if you couple that with, of course, this is, my coaching specialty is lifestyle medicine, using your lifestyle as a whole in a holistic manner to keep yourself healthy and keep yourself well. So if you couple that with, staying up late, poor sleep, no exercise at all. It doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym, but maybe even walk 30 minutes a day. If you couple all of those things together, obviously the diet being a big part of it, then you move from having some mental health issues, having some down days, to it turning into an illness. And like I mentioned before, I think why this is so dangerous, because it's an illness that you can't really see, but it is very real and it is very much there. Okay, let's move on. So now let's look at the impact of fruits and veggies. So 8 servings of fruit and veggies a day is what's needed to make a substantial, meaningful change. Fruits and veggies that are high specifically in vitamin C are especially beneficial because they're a cofactor in the production of dopamine, which is kind of your zest for life neurotransmitter. And this includes, just having even a fresh squeezed glass of orange juice or fresh squeezed glass of pineapple juice or mango juice. And now, when discussing juice, I'm not talking about the sugary juice that you're going to get at, the regular grocery store. I'm talking about 100% juice. You can either juice it yourself at home, or you can get it at the store, but it has to be 100% juice. And I can actually attest to the use of orange juice. In fact, the way I came across this research is, I'm going to share a little bit later on a couple of things that happened to me in my life that I went through a lot of mental health challenges with. And for some reason, even since I was younger, I've always been a person that my body intuitively, I think we all are like this. And the more that we have moved away from being connected to the earth and being connected to nature, and, the more that our modern lives get in the way, if you will, I think we've moved away from this. But I do think, and I do believe, and in all of my research, I see a pattern that we were all meant to be this way originally. This is how human beings were meant to be. We were meant to be intuitive to our bodies and to what is going on inside of us, both mentally and physically. So something that would happen to me a lot is I would get a craving for something specific. Let's just say cashews, or, what I'm going to share in a few minutes about what happened to me. I would get this intense sense that I just needed to drink orange juice. And when I looked into it later on, I realized that vitamin C is directly related to regulating your dopamine levels, your serotonin levels. And now I understood that when I was feeling down, my body was trying to give me clues to what was the solution, what would help support me in that moment, or would help raise those levels of those, happy hormones, healthy hormones that I needed to get through that. So we see here a direct correlation between especially vitamin C, but fresh fruits and vegetables in general. And these are, foods that fight depression. Remember those bad MOAs, the enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters, like your serotonin and your dopamine? Many fruits and vegetables, including apples, berries, but then also onions, green tea, they contain phytonutrients, which inhibit these bad MOAs. So if you're, eating a diet that's high in, as Dr. Greger mentioned, eggs, even fish, even obviously all of the processed meats, you're giving yourself a disadvantage. You're blocking the ability for your body to support you when you're going through these things, for your body to regulate your hormones, and for your body to, give you that dopamine and serotonin, for your body to make that. And if you want to reverse that, some of the things that are your friends or aids in that are, apples, berries specifically. And why? Because they have a lot of antioxidants. And antioxidants is one of the biggest things that fights inflammation, which we talked about before, which is the biggest culprit in a lot of diseases. Green tea is another thing that has a lot of antioxidants, phytonutrients, vitamins that aid in fighting inflammation as well. Phytochemicals like quercetin, which is only found, by the way, in plant-based foods, also act as an MOA inhibitor. And you can take this either in a plant-based supplement form, or just do some research on foods that contain quercetin and include those foods in your diet a couple times a day, maybe on salads, maybe first thing in the morning. One of the things that I like to do is people talk about healthy fats. And anytime people talk about healthy fats, they turn to, your fish, for instance, or I've even heard people talking about like starting your morning with salmon and broccoli and eggs. The only thing there that actually would be helpful to start your day would be the broccoli. Because as we heard from Dr. Greger, and you can also, all of this that I'm sharing with you today, there's so much information available online as well. You can do your own research. You can look into this, and you'll find that that these things that were considered traditionally, helpful omega-3s, omega fatty acids, are actually harmful to your body. So if you want to, switch those out and have a plant-based option instead, what I like to do is start the day with a bowl of fruit. And, that could be any fruit that I have on hand, usually berries, kiwis. And then what I will do is just sprinkle some flax seeds, either in powder form or in a seed form, or some chia seeds on top of that. And that will help me start my day with that healthy fiber that I need to immediately start fighting any inflammation. As I mentioned before, I have lupus. Any inflammation that I might have in my body. The other thing I like to do is start my day with lemon water. And again, the lemon, the citrus that we talked about before. Starting my day with that citrus to give that boost to, the brain and the body. A lot of people talk about starting their day with coffee. It's a very popular thing to do. It was interesting that I was watching recently this former, I think, CIA agent who was talking about the fact that the way that he stayed in optimal health, and it wasn't just him, he was talking about like his team, and apparently his wife was also a former CIA. And he said that the way that they stayed in optimal health, even if they were, out in the field or something, was to drink a glass of lemon water, like fresh lemon squeezed into the water, rather than coffee. And that's what kept them the most alert and, gave them kind of a clear mind to be able to think on their feet the way they needed to. And I thought that that was extremely telling, that instead of coffee or all these things that we've been raised to think, some fresh, simple thing as a fresh, half of a lemon in water was something that provided so much benefits. Okay. In the interest of time, I hope you guys are checking the time because I'm not. So improved mood. So in some of these studies, subjects eating a plant-based diet experienced fewer negative emotions than those on omnivore diet. They also reported feeling a lot more clear-headed, a lot more energy, a lot more vigor, if you will. Removing things like chicken, fish, and eggs was shown to improve mood swings, depression, and anxiety within as little as 2 weeks. I think Dr. Greger mentioned that in the clip that I showed as well. That's the other thing. These dietary benefits is something that you can see the difference in a very short amount of time. I will caution though, and this has happened with a couple of people that I've coached, if you're someone that has been for a very long time on a very unhealthy, as they call it, the SAD diet, standard American diet, for a very long time, and then you make the switch either gradually or cold turkey over to a more holistic diet, a more, plant-based whole foods diet, it does take a little bit longer for you to see the results. So Dr. Greger as well mentioned, seeing some results within 2 weeks. But I do want to mention here that sometimes it can take longer, because if you think about it, what's happening is your body needs to detox. Your body needs to clean itself out. I mean, it would be the case with anything. Have you ever, had a glass that maybe you had something, I don't know, coffee or something in it, and you put it into the sink and you began running the water in it? And what happens? At first, you don't really see any change if you pay attention. But as you continue to run the water and flush that out, eventually, if you just keep running the water into that, glass of whatever it is, it cleans itself out, but it takes time. So this happened to me I think last year I had a client and she dealt with a lot of mental health issues, a lot of mental illness, including depression. She'd gone through a couple of things in her life, some loss and things like that. And because of all of that, she was binge eating a lot and she wasn't eating very healthy. She wasn't moving at all. And it took some, time, a good couple of sessions to even be able to have her look at this as an option, because we've been conditioned to not really look at our food as an option for healing, as an option for dealing with these things. And when she did, she told me she was feeling even worse. She was feeling low energy. She was feeling, it wasn't working for her. And I told her, you need to stick with it. You need to stick with it. And around the 4-week mark, the opposite happened. And she started to feel energized and things started to turn around. She started to tell me, I can think so clearly. My mind is just clear. I am just making better choices, better decisions. And the other thing to note, her cravings for, sweets late at night and things like that had gone down. So anyway, my point here is just to understand that, if you've been on a heavy standard American diet, you'll need to stick with this for a while to see results. But fruits and vegetables are shown to increase the feelings of engagement, meaning, and purpose in your life, as I mentioned before. So, like I was saying, basically, to summarize, thinking outside of the box and thinking about your lifestyle as a whole for healing with a focus on diet, because what we eat is such a big part of our lives, and you really, really, really are what you eat. So just, here are some more studies. Basically, there's a lot of research. This presentation is actually much, much longer. I'm happy if anyone wants to reach out to discuss it further. And like I said, Dr. Greger has a lot of research on this. There's a lot of research online that supports the connection between plant-based eating and also healthy lifestyle, just like taking a walk for 20 minutes. Connecting with friends is another thing. We are very social creatures, human beings. And once you fix the diet, you'll be surprised how you then have the energy, have the desire to connect with your friends again, or to, step out in a social setting again, which contributes also to your overall wellness and health. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I'm sorry if I didn't keep to the time as much as I would have liked to.
Fine. That was fine. It was delightful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And now I'm going to ask Dr. Friedman, our Director of Clinical Studies, to come on. Here she comes. Hello, Dr. Friedman. So Dr. Friedman is going to be fielding the questions. And while she's looking there, if one of our staff could, we are a nonprofit. Here comes the shameless pitch. We are a nonprofit. My wife and I are full-time volunteers, but we do pay our staff, and we have a fair number of expenses putting people through our jump starts and our other programs which don't cover the cost. And there it is. If you'd like to make a donation, Serena has put the link right in there. Great. Thanks a lot, Serena. All right, back to you, Dr. Friedman.
Okay, so if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. There's one question asking about working with autistic patients and neurodivergent people. How do you promote a vegan lifestyle in that group, which may have some sensory issues with food?
This is something that, you know how it is. Your friends and family are always the hardest to get through to. I actually have a best friend. We've been friends since we were back in I used to be a fashion stylist, actually, interestingly enough, a long time ago. We've been friends for over 15 years, and her son was born, and they discovered later on when there was a few development markers that he missed, that he actually has autism. And I tried to talk to her about this, and there is actually research on the benefits of a plant-based diet with some of these conditions. I personally don't know too much about it, but I did provide her with connections to people who do, and a lot of the research on that. So far, she has not been interested in trying, but I do think that there's a lot of benefits to it, and there is a lot of research out there to support that. How you would do it exactly, I personally haven't had the opportunity to try to introduce those things.
Fair enough. By the way, if the person who asked that question wants to come on to the to speak, send a message to the panelists, and we can actually, because you may have some experience yourself on how that works. Because I know the same person also said, he said, everyone, I'm autistic and vegan. My irritable bowel syndrome disappeared when I went vegan. How do I promote a vegan diet to other autistic people, many of whom have sensory issues with food? Yeah, interesting. Anything else, Dr. Friedman?
A question about MAO and whether it interferes with melatonin as well as serotonin.
Yes, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And again, if you don't have enough fiber in your body runs on fiber and vitamin. I mean, it runs on a lot of things, but fiber, vitamins, healthy fats. And if you have a severe deficiency because you're consuming, for the most part, the SAD diet or something similar, then yes, including you are going to have MOA blockers, including your melatonin, which will contribute to poor sleep, and then you're back to the same cycle.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question. So in lifestyle medicine, we often talk about how health coaches are really sort of the linchpin of moving forward in the and because there's not enough lifestyle medicine doctors, and we really need health coaches. Could you maybe address that? What your experience as a health coach is, and
Yes, I'd be happy to. And I would think, and I also want to share that I think not only are they not enough doctors who approach any of these illnesses through a lifestyle medicine lens, or even know anything about nutrition. It's well known that in the medical field, they don't even give them any training in nutrition. And I think for a lot of people, it actually helps to speak to a coach because it feels less daunting. You know what I mean? It feels less daunting to speak to a coach than to speak to a doctor and to dive deep into a lot of these issues that people are having, and a lot of these habits, and a lot of these things that are hard to break, if you will. And in my experience personally as a coach, the way that you are trained to approach this as a coach is very different than I think a doctor, because you kind of approach it as a buddy system, if you will. Like, let's just look into this, let's do this together. And I think when it's coming from a doctor, it sounds far more official, if you will, far more like a command or order, or this is what you should do. And with a coach, I think people take it a lot lighter. And that doesn't mean that they adapt anything or change anything, but I think they feel, in my experience personally, they feel a lot more at ease to reach out. And let's just say they didn't, do what we talked about, and then they come to their next session. I don't think they feel that as a coach, I'm going to have any of that, no judgment. We kind of just like go over it all again. What I like to do personally as a coach, I didn't get to it today, unfortunately, is provide a lot of experiences from other people that are willing to share, willing to let me share their experiences, and a lot of my own life. Again, we didn't get to it today, but I had a lot of loss in my life. I had one year that had a big, like 4 different losses in my family, including parents, and the birth of my daughter all at the same time. And I saw between myself and my siblings, who are not plant-based and I am plant-based, a clear difference in our mental wellness and in our ability to deal with these challenges that we were facing, that we were all facing the same thing. And I saw a clear difference in, those that are on a carnivore diet and myself, which was on a, plant-based whole foods diet. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you. So someone has put in here that eating meat causes kvetching. Yeah, I think she had a couple of other interesting comments. Very good. Okay, and what about and then well, actually it's 8:30, but quickly somebody asked what are examples of MAO foods? And I'm not sure
MAO
the answer.
foods include eggs, which for some reason are pitched by the egg industry as something that's very healthy, but in fact is in MAO food. Another one is fish, which the clip that I showed with Dr. Greger was actually longer. You can go back and look at that clip or just like look into MAO foods on Dr. Greger's website, and he has a lot of information on it.
Great, thank you. All right, well, it is 8:30. Raquel, we're so grateful to you for having stayed up so late.
Sure,
And
this was
for
lovely.
having, okay, and for having kept your cat out of the room, although we would like to meet your cat eventually.
Well, he's sleeping now. We'll let him be.
I will let him be. Okay, excellent. All right, so Dr. Freeman, thank you so much. I really appreciate your helping out. And in the background, we've got Serena Farb and Bob Frankie, who are helping to engineer tonight. And once again, hope you all join us for our future events. You can see them on our website, rochesterlifestylemedicine.org, or the Pale Blue Dot community. So thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.